the three right away. Just attack the basket. James catches, puts up the three. Won't go. Rebound box. Back out to Allen. His three-pointer. Bang! Tie game with 5 seconds remaining.
Welcome to the Ultimate Super Coach and Fantasy Sports Show. You are now listening to the Insight Fantasy Sports Podcast.
Boom shakalaka!
G'day, hello Hoopers. I am at NBA GWiz and I feel it warrants a bit of a trumpet. ThunderTurtle! My boy Trent, how you doing, man?
Good,
Right
Matty
there.
G. Good.
Mate, you're
keen as to talk about my boys.
That's exactly right. Look, you're one of our key contributors here at Inside Fantasy Sports, especially on the NBA front. And nothing just gets your blood pumping more than a beer in the afternoon, a chat with me about your OKC. Tell us a little bit how you found the Thunder being like your team.
Yeah, well, I guess back in the day, surprisingly, I didn't like basketball. Started getting into it at around kind of 2007, 2008. And obviously that's when Thunder came in and took over Seattle. And so I figured I'd watched a bit of Kevin Durant and figured that was going to be my team from that point on. And yeah, now we're here and haven't changed. So been pretty lucky through the years getting Russ, KD, all those types of players come through. And then a few lean years, but yeah, now it's starting to look like we're on the way up again, which is really exciting from a fan perspective and also from a fantasy perspective as well, which is what we're here to talk about today. So keen as
100%. And you've always gone through those lean years, but even in those lean years, I guess you could say there was always fantasy. That stuff is there. C1, Mr. Triple Double, Russell Westbrook. Can I ask you, when is it we talking about a stat stuffing machine? Because he helped a lot of guys win leagues over the year because he could put it up on multiple facets. Who's been your favorite OKC player all time? Fan favorite bloke?
It has to be Russ. I mean, most OKC fans, it'll end up being Russ. I mean, with the whole KD leaving, Russ staying and sticking it out with us, I think he's going to be a fan favorite for most people. And then I think it would also be remiss of me not to give my boy Nick Collison a shout out as an OKC GOAT / legend. So, didn't look that great on the stat sheet, but he was one of those heart and soul guys that you just love.
He really was, wasn't he? He was an absolute screamer for you lads. And he's been one of the, I guess, the legends of the team for a long, long time. So what we'll do is we'll talk about today. I guess we're just going to go with the guys. We're going to talk about your lads, as we said. Let's bring him up here and have a little bit of a chat about him. I'm trying to get this on here, mate, because we've got the brand new layout for him. I'm going to put this in here. Oh, I can't do it. It's all gone since. There we go. Wait, we'll put it in the 4-person. There we go. We'll fit it in here. We'll make it work. Trent. This is our OKC Thunder.
I like that.
You like that? This is what your team looks like. Doesn't it look like a bunch of absolute gems?
It's so good to see some youth there, but some serious talent amongst it as well. And anytime there's an Aussie in there that's excelling, you got to love that too.
You really, really do. Headed up, of course, by our own Josh Giddey. Talking about your team ins and outs, the number one out we're going to touch on right now is Patty Mills. Were you absolutely excited to have Patty there as like two Aussies in your team, two legends of the game here in Australia?
Yeah, well, it was going to be 3 as well with Jack White, who's not on there at this point.
That's
but
right.
Jack White coming in as well. We're going to have 3 Aussies. I saw a few people referring to it as the Thunder from Down Under, which I was pretty keen on. And I think we'll still go with it anyway, even without Paddy. But obviously, Patty Mills, like Aussie basketball legend. I've got like one of his signed basketball cards in the background there as well. Like just everything he's ever done for the Boomers, just fantastic. And hopefully, World Cup coming up as well. Hopefully we get to see a bit more from him. But was super keen to see him in a Thunder jersey because I would have got one.
And we like to build off those World Cups as well, because this is one of the things that Josh Giddey excelled at, got a lot of attention from playing these international rep games for Australia, especially Jack White. We saw Jack White in Melbourne, I think last year at a pickup game, and he was just, not a pickup game, but in those FIBA warm-ups. And that's what got him into that summer league and that little stint at Denver. He got a chip. He goes to a team for a year and walks away with the championship. And now he's over in OKC.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if he makes the roster in the end, because I'm sure we'll touch on it soon. That there's I think we've still got about 21 players on the active roster at the moment, and that's got to be cut down. And it seems strange to bring him in on a contract and then get rid of him before he even plays, but let's be honest, it's Sam Presti. Who knows what's going to happen?
But in Sam, you trust. Impressed or be all blessed.
Absolutely. Absolutely impressed we trust. I mean, he's already scouting some kindergarteners out there for the picks we've got, so got to trust him.
Absolutely do. Of the ins, we just mentioned this. We were doing the research for this for your roster. You got Davis Bertans in, Victor Oladipo, Ty Washington, rookie Cason Wallace, and Keontae Johnson coming in, and Patty Mills in and then out have been probably the biggest adds you could say for your team this year. But we're going to look back at their year in review, if you will, and have a little bit about how that could shake out and inform the year that's going to come up. You look at this roster, and the man whose name we can't fit into one little Microsoft Excel spreadsheet, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, last year, far and away, was an absolute fantasy stud muffin.
He's a legend, mate.
Yeah, you guys love him there. Tell us a little bit about the fan base in OKC for Shai.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's funny because when we had that trade for getting rid of Paul George and getting all those assets back, getting SGA back, I remember I was watching him play that first season and thinking that, okay, we could be getting something here. And then obviously that year that Chris Paul went away from the team, all of a sudden I started seeing glimpses. The fan base started seeing glimpses. Everyone else was denying it. No one else wanted to see it. But yeah, I was so glad that last year we got that breakout year and the rest of the league started to take notice because he is on court and off court, just has a great mentality. And for fantasy, he just fills up every stat. It's fantastic.
Now you'll be able to hear this. We're pre-recording this one and we did something on the weekend. We had a few drinks and had a bit of a Sunday session and it got manic and stupid. And then I broke it down in another podcast. I had the third pick and I was like, you know what? I'm kind of dumb if I don't take Shai because he does it across the board, especially with such elite field goal percentage. He is without a doubt the number one stud in there in OKC when it comes to fantasy purposes. He's a first round pick and you can see that last year his ADP was 25. He exceeded that. So that's basically in a 12-team league, that's the beginning of your third round. He was a top 5 player all year round. Usage 31%. Like he does use the ball a lot. He cops it. 31 points a game though. This is the interesting thing about him. Not even a 3 a game for Shai. He gets it done at the line and he's really high ability to get to the line and then knock down those free throws at an exceptional click. Like he averaged almost 11 free throw attempts a game last season and he knocks down an elite percentage of those. He rebounds the ball. He dishes out those dimes. He gives you basically 2.5 stocks. That's juicy, isn't it, Trent?
Mate, absolutely. And I think, as you say, one of the major things for him last year was transitioning away from just firing away step-back threes, which he was doing a lot, and that obviously dragged his percentage down to last year, as you say, took under 1 3 a game. Like, he wasn't afraid to take them in the big moments when he had to, but his game is predicated on just getting to the ring, and he's so shifty. You see some of the moves he makes down low. It's a nightmare to guard.
Now, this is what I'm really interested with. We'll get to this when we do a bit of a look at your starting 5. Chet Holmgren coming in. Now, we've got no stats up there for him because obviously he's a rookie. But how do you think he's going to work in that pick and roll situation with Chet? Because you've got 2 incredible playmakers, very savants with the ball in Shai and Giddey. How do you think straight away Chet's going to fit into your OKC system?
Yeah, I think it'll be some kind of road bumps along the start. I think it's going to take a while for them to figure it out. But I think once they do, I mean, that ability of Chet, not only to pick and roll, but pick and pop is going to be something that OKC hasn't really had in terms of someone who can go both ways. I think having someone, as you say, someone like Josh Giddey, he hasn't had someone who he can just run the pick and roll with and throw the ball up near the ring and know that person's going to finish it. I think that's going to be Chet's biggest asset coming in. Obviously, aside from his defense is going to be the number one priority for OKC in terms of what it's going to fix, and that's an issue we've always needed to address. But yeah, offensively, I think it's going to really help Giddey. Not sure. SGA, we'll see. I'm not 100% sure if it'll help him all that much, but I think Giddey's going to be a big beneficiary.
Yeah, we're going to touch on that one as someone to watch later on and watch this space. If you're watching on YouTube right now, I stuffed up because I was copying, pasting way too hard before we jumped on this afternoon. But we've got some indicators there about values of players. So we're going to go down the list real quickly, Trent. Say if I'm right or I'm wrong. And I've stuffed 2 of these up, and I know that you'll think about it straight away. We've basically given equal value last year in fantasy, returning this year in 23-24, plus value. Obviously, we think they could exceed, not their ADP, but exceed where you might take them or exceed their performance based on last year. Down value or where it could go either way. So we reckon, look, SGA is about equal. He's going to be he's going to be a first round pick, 4th pick overall. Maybe not. Maybe he's down to the 7th or the 8th. It's not going to really hurt you when you're getting all that across the board. Equal value there for SGA. Yep.
Yeah, 100%. I think equal, if not better, because I think his field goal percentage could stay at the same or maybe even go up a little bit. Assist numbers is that key one that I think that's what Chet could help him out with, is getting those assist numbers up. Rebounds, I think, will stay about the same. He's not being an elite rebounder, but he'll stay around that mark. So I think, yeah, you're pretty safe if you're picking him anywhere between, as you say, 3 to anywhere in the first round, in all honesty. I think he's going to be that number 1 point guard.
I can see him dropping down to 4 rebounds a game with a big rebounder and Chet coming down because he doesn't need to probably lean into it. It'll be, rebound by committee. If he can keep his blocks at 1 a game, which is exceptional for a guard, elite. Yeah. 2.5 stocks is just, you want that from your point guard. For me, he can exceed his value if he gets the 3-pointers up. If he starts knocking down double the amount, like 2 threes a game, and keep this efficiency, look out. Like, that is a absolute stat stuffer across your board. Chet Holmgren's obviously up value. It can go either way with Cason Wallace, and we'll touch on him, especially with the backup point guard minutes. And I know, look, I'll ask you straight away, why can it go either way for Cason in his rookie year here in OKC?
Yeah, I think Cason's going to be an interesting one. He's got a few players in front of him that need to eat before him. So you got Dort, who's probably going to play that similar high-pressure perimeter defense role. And then you've also got Tre Mann, who's not on that list. But Tre Mann is kind of this year's boom or bust for him in terms of his place in OKC, because he has shown that he has a massive ability and natural talent to score off the dribble and create. But one thing that was really noticeable for people who watch a lot of Thunder is when he plays with SGA, he's terrible. He really needs to learn how to play off the ball. So to be honest, his minutes, I wouldn't be surprised to see him involved in some trade talks even before the season started, noting that roster cull that we were talking about before. Tre Mann could be one of those pieces that we move on with a bunch of picks, maybe even moving Dort on as well, knowing that we got Cason Wallace, but maybe not, maybe after a season. Because Cason Wallace, as I think we were talking about before, his college stats, like, he's a menace on the defensive end there. So if he has a higher figure.
Oh no, and I was going to say, and he has a higher 3-point percentage in college. Yeah, obviously that's not the same. It was 0.346 compared to the best career average of 31.5 for Trey. So yeah, you're bang on there. He could absolutely knock him down outside.
Yeah, so absolutely. So I see it might take a season or maybe half a season, but I think they're going to watch this space to see whether Tre Mann and Dort could be replaced by a Cason Wallace, move them along with a bunch of picks, and try and bring in a kind of those younger star players that OKC kind of need moving forward. So that's just one of those watch those space.
Now, this one here, we've got about equal value for Jalen. That should be actually down. I'm actually taking him down on value from last year only because there was a bit of talk. So this was consensus done. I'm thinking that he's a little bit down on value. And I was on this train early. There's going to be so many guys in your league. We saw it in a mock draft that we did, Trent. They're going to want to be like, oh, J-Dub. Oh, he's a machine. Oh, mate, the picture that's just come on social media today, I know that was in our group chat. He looks like he's eaten 4 other human beings and been
just jacked.
He is just the biggest unit I think he's put on like 20 kegs of muscle alone for that power forward spot.
I think it's going to be J Swole, not J-Dub anymore, because he is a rig.
He is absolutely. So I want to see what goes on there if he's going to like slender down, because we've seen it before. Like, one of his things was his athleticism and his weight. And Kawhi Leonard, it's very Kawhi-ish when Kawhi went bulky. It's very on that, but even to the extreme. Like his ADP last year was 122nd. I got him late. He was the 74th, but again, it was after the All-Star break that we saw that massive evolution for him. Like, after the All-Star break, he was an absolute flyer. Everyone couldn't, but he's going to go off early in your drafts this year. But a lot of what he does was as filling the void of Chet almost, if you will. So he's probably going to be down value on last year, or return about the same value, but he's definitely not going to have that breakout. Do you think?
No, I think you're right in the sense that people are going to reach on him a little bit compared to last year, and I don't think he's going to meet the expectations of where people are going to grab him. If he had had about the same kind of draft position, maybe even just a little bit of an improvement, I think that's probably the right value for him, maybe around that kind of 90 to 100 mark rather than maybe a 70 to 80 mark. But one thing I will say, that extra weight, I was watching that scrimmage for the USA Select, and he was bodying Jaren Jackson Jr. And he was. So that was that first one. He bodied him in the first scrimmage. The second scrimmage that they had, he had a really nice moment where Shea does this a lot. Drives, puts that shoulder in, pulls up in the mid-range for that really easy open midi. So I think if he can do that a lot through the season when maybe SGA goes off the court, I do think he's going to still give you some pretty good contribution from a fantasy perspective. I can tell you right now, I'll be trying to get him because, number one,
100%.
Bit of OKC bias. But at the same time, I do still believe that field goal percentage will stay up. Maybe not 52% because that's nuts for a rookie to be shooting that.
Yeah, he had a fly. And again, as I said, after the All-Star break, according to hashtag basketball, he was the 30th best player. So you've got guys trying to take him in the 40s and the 50s right now. But I think he's going to be equal value to his overall year, about 75 or probably top 60. Look, he could exceed it. Just with Chet there, he could do a little bit less. But his assist, like what really did it for him? The assists were there, the 1.4 steals and the 0.5 blocks. If he can get some more stops on the blocks, he could exceed that. But we expect him possibly being around the 60 to 75 mark, probably. We've put minus value on Josh Giddey only because we don't know look, I think it could be equal value to last year or better at the end of the day. So the consensus between the starting five blokes was he could be down a little bit, but we'll get to it later on. Josh Giddey could have an up year as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a 50-50, but I think, yet again, I think it's all dependent, and this whole roster is now dependent on how Chet works out. Because Chet could completely change the way that this roster looks and the way that this roster plays. So that's going to be the biggest wait-and-see moment for this roster.
And I guess that's what we're talking about here, because as you said, like looking at the roster today when we were chatting in the prep for this, it's a roster that's too big. You can only take 14 or 15 blokes into the NBA season, and you've actually got 20 right now. So there's just way too many dudes. And to make matters even better, Presti, the magician that he is, let go Patty Mills and said, come on, let's take 3 more guys on instead to whittle down and use as trade chips. Like,
yeah. It's one of those things where you've got to trust Presti, but it just looks a bit like a mad scientist from the outside looking in. But you've just got to trust that he knows what he's doing, because I think, and this, as I just said, it all revolves around Chet. I think he's going to give it a season to see how the offense looks, how the defense looks, how the team revolves around it. If he feels as though we maybe needed a backup big and he's more suited to a power forward, don't be surprised to see us go out for a borderline all-star center. If he looks like he can control the center position, we maybe go out for like a Pascal Siakam type to fill that 4 instead. So I think that's what we're trying to do. We've maintained a lot of flexibility with having that treasure chest of picks.
Oh, if you could play Pascal Siakam somehow as a glorified small forward and Jalen Williams at the power forward, Chet in the middle, you've just got length all over that court. Josh Giddey is your shooting guard and Shea is your, like, and this is what we're going to talk about shooting guards for a second. Talking about Giddey. Could I ask you an honest question, Trent? Can anybody apart from Isaiah Joe shoot a 3-pointer in OKC?
Well, you forgot to say we did get Bertans, one of the highest paid snipers in the league. He's actually an interesting one. And to be fair, Josh Giddey, I mean, he raised his 3-point percentage from 26% year one, 32% in year two. So I do think all that work that we're doing with Chip as our shooting coach, I think it's going to pay dividends, because Josh was a lot more selective. He took less threes than he did in his first year, a game, but he did raise that percentage up. And I think we're going to see that to be a bit of a trend moving forward. Lou Dort, love him, but he needs to stop jacking it up. And I think you'll see him stop shooting it as much, because now that we've got some of those players around him who are more offensively focused, if he just buckles down and shoots a corner 3 every now and then and just plays defense, I think that'll help our team's overall 3-point percentage. But I think, and I think, as I said, Davis Bertans, it's going to be an interesting one. I don't know if he makes the starting roster, like if he actually makes it come game 1, we might trade him probably. But if he does play, you got to remember what happened to Al Horford when he came to OKC that 1 year. Everyone was talking about how his 3-ball was unreliable in Philly. Came to OKC and knocked down 2 a game on a really good percentage, his second highest career percentage. So that same thing might happen for Bertans. We could potentially revive his 3-point shooting career for all we know.
And look, he has had moments of flashes. Like he showed it last year in Dallas a little bit. In Washington, that's why he got paid that money. He could stretch the floor and do that. He wasn't just very good. I mean, everyone in Washington was like, "Oh my, we did what? We paid how much?"
Yeah.
And I think the management's change there over time obviously reflects that as well. But at your starting 5, you don't space the floor incredibly well outside Dort. This is where Chet Holmgren's ability to make the 3 is going to open it up a little bit more. If we see some progress there from Giddey, this is looking like the starting lineup. We've got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Josh Giddey, Lou Dort, Jalen Williams, and Chet Holmgren as our projected top 5. On this slide, what we're seeing, because I cooked it up and I got everything right on this one because I put way too much attention, you see what Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is very good at. And it's a lot of things in basketball. His field goal percentage there is like the light green is just there is good. It's good because it's like not elite, like a 600% center, but 5-10 out of a point guard is huge. He's elite with his free throw percentage, 31 points a game, elite. But the 2.6 stocks is amazing. 5.5 assists is good. You pair that with Giddey. And if you look at Giddey's numbers, he's also very good at basketball. 16 points a game, 7.9 rebounds from your shooting guard. If you talk about out of position like stats, that one's one right there. He leads the team in assists as well. This is your shooting guard who leads a team in rebounds, Trent. It's insanity.
It is, and he's just one of those players that, as you say, he's just good at basketball. He doesn't excel in any one area, but I will say his court vision is already up there with some of the best in the league, and he's only 20.
100%.
He's 20 years old with 3 years of professional basketball under his belt. That vision, and that's why he's averaging 6.2 assists. I would not be shocked to see that go up to 8 assists a game this year, given that he's now got Chet. I would not be shocked.
I don't want to sound like a dick because I love Josh Giddey. I just want him to play more defense. And I want, defensively, he's good. Like, don't get me wrong. He knows where to put his body. He does read the lanes okay. Like, he plays great off-ball defense. I would just like to see it translate into some more numbers, especially because of the length that he has as a shooting guard. I would love to see those blocks creep up. If he could get even 0.8 or 1 block a game somehow, which is hard for a shooting guard at the same time. But if he could get his steals to 1.5 and even 0.8 blocks and drive that up over 2 stocks a game, I think that's where Giddey's going to get some value if he can increase that defensive presence there in the team. Lou Dort, maybe not great at basketball, but if he can play his role, he is good at basketball.
Exactly, and that's the thing. He just needs to learn that he's not the guy on offense. And I think it might have just been a bit of a kind of a result of how we've been playing basketball in the last few years, which is, look, if we win, that's okay. If we don't, that's not that bad. We're still rebuilding. Now that we're probably starting to build together a roster that we want to start trying to compete with and build, he needs to learn his role. Or as I said, he might find himself maybe finding himself elsewhere in favor of someone like a Casein Wallace, who has a much better potential for a 3-point percentage, because he could come through and be that guy.
I just prematurely pushed this for him, but Presty's pretty much going to say,
"Not tonight."
Pretty much every single time he picks up the ball, because he wants it so much. Like, he had those flashes there where they were rebuilding and they were like, hey, "It's the Lou Dort show. It's the Lou Dort show." And then the basketball team is real now. So the question is here: is it really organizational direction? Playoffs or bust? Is it the playoffs or bust for you guys this year? A healthy Chet after putting him on lay-by for a year. I mean, you had him on afterpay for a whole NBA season, but now Chet Holmgren's healthy. You can move pieces. You could get someone in, as you said, before the draft. You've got an absolute treasure. There's a war chest of picks there in OKC. Is this a playoffs or bust, or play in or bust for you guys?
I'm thinking play in or bust for us this year. I still think there's just too much unknown when you have Chet coming in as our starting 5. I just think that Presty's going to play the long game. He's always been someone to do that. Let it play out, see what we've got in Chet and see how he gels with everyone else, and then look at big moves this coming off season. I think the year after will absolutely be playoff or bust. But this year I think it's that play in.
Yeah, I would happen to agree with you on that one already. I love what you're doing. J-Dub just jacking up and putting in this Team USA work. And I'm always a fan of what happens in the off season. Like, I think it's fine to post up, Equinox doing your workouts and having a bit of a run there with some lads and calling your friends up and like, hey, Trent, do you want to come and run some scrims? And, you put together a really nice mixtape that ends up on Bleacher Report. But then there's training with the mind of Steve Kerr and taking a country to a world championships where you've got a bit of pride after USA's been bounced. It came 7th last year. I think there's pride in those games. Those aren't just scrimmages. There's like egos involved to show out. And I think if you can put in the work there, that's ultimately going to translate to success in your next season in basketball.
Yeah, agreed. And I saw a snippet today, actually, even of Chet Holmgren. They obviously interviewed him after their last scrimmage workout. And the question to him was, okay, you've got a bit of time now between end of this and between the start of your preseason with OKC. And they said, what are you going to do? And he said, I'm going to hit the gym. And he had the biggest smile on his face saying it. He has got this great mentality. I think there's a lot of people who knocked Chet and don't like his attitude. I think it's fantastic. I think he is going to be a real hard worker. He wants to succeed. And that's the sort of thing you look for. And he is going to have that mentality that's going to take him a long way, I think.
This is a really good lineup. Like, if you look across it, this is absolutely across the board. If you told me this was an NBA starting 5, I would think it was a possible play of time. The way you can improve that is the small forward spot, as we've discussed. Jalen Williams on a second season return. You hope that the Scotty Barnes thing where he drops off after the, getting the hype the first year doesn't happen. We've got to remember, though, he went on a streak with injuries and whatever after the trade deadline of the All-Star break. Jalen Williams ended up in that time as the 30th best player in fantasy. So if you're really high on him and then you say, oh, he's regressed. Well, no, look at it as a season of 82 games. And so for your fantasy season, do you want a guy to be the top 30 value? Of course you do for a stretch of time. But if you're going to draft him in there at that value, you're not getting a value return. If you're expecting him to come in and do the 74th best job in the NBA or the 65th best job in the NBA, and you get him with the 80th pick, yeah, great win. You've made a little bit of a bump. You've exceeded that average. But his ADP last year was 122, and it's not going to be that. He's already flying off in the top 50s. You've just got to watch that. Chet Holmgren is the interesting one. We'll touch on him in a second. In our next the big thing here is what's happening at the 4 or 5 spots. Who do you see as the potential players in that rotation, and how much fantasy relevance is there, Trent?
So I think for me, someone who gets forgotten about who's a really good glue guy is Kendrick Williams. He is a really, really good glue guy. And I saw a couple of stretches last year. He's hot. He went nuts. He's one of those guys that could potentially get you like a 10, 5, and 6 game on average if he gets the minutes. And I think now that OKC's direction is something like a play-in or bust, I think it's he's going to have to get the minutes. So for me, he's going to be that kind of small power forward position, undersized, but he just does a lot for you. And I think fantasy-wise, maybe don't pick him. I wouldn't pick him up in your draft, but I'd be definitely watching that waiver wire.
Yeah, 100%. Look, I've got down here as well. What about Dario Saric and the other Jalen Williams and Jeremiah Robinson-Earl?
I think we actually got rid of Saric.
Oh, you did too? Actually, yeah, you did. He's out. So what about Jalen Williams and Jeremiah Robinson-Earl? And you've got Aaron Wiggins there as well in your shooting guard small forward spot. So could you see maybe a lineup where you've got Shea at point, Giddey on the bench, you've thrown out there, let's say, as you said, Trey Mann doesn't play really well with Shea. So Kaysen's in there. Let's say Kaysen Wallace, Josh Giddey, filling in at the small forward spot. You put Aaron Wiggins out there, and then you're bringing in Jalen Williams and Kenrich Williams. Could that be a potential lineup?
I could definitely see it. I mean, at the end of the day, Jalen Williams, he showed last year he's a lot better than where he was drafted. And what surprised not even, I think, the organization, but himself as well, his 3-point ball was actually really good. He actually knocked down a lot of threes. And he also took the most I think it might have been the most charges in the league, and he's a rookie. He was fantastic at finding those lanes, at getting those charges. It's incredible.
So here's someone who we want to watch. Again, this is the whole youth movement there. So as you said, guys are going to come out but we're thinking that there's going to be Dagnall's going to probably put in a lot more Kenrich Williams this year. He really showed out and proved his worth on this team. And I think he's definitely going to be one of the ones who's sticking around. We've got little snipers This is a fantasy relevance wise, as you said, it's grabbing guys off the waiver wire. Here's a hot waiver wire guy. Most 3-pointers in your team who 2.23s a game. Jojo.
It's got to be Isaiah.
It's Isaiah.
Yeah, ask Matty Morrell about Isaiah Joe, that game that put him on the map against Dallas when he came on in that second half and went like nuclear. He's a really, really good player. And the fact that Philly let him go and just threw him to the waiver wires and we picked him up for nothing is, I hope we look back on it and think, wow, that is one of the biggest steals of all time, because his 3-pointer is really, really good. He also showed that he's got hops too. He had a couple of real dunks as well. So he is definitely one of those ones I'd watch for on the waiver wire throughout the year. If your team needs those 3-point streams, if you need that kind of boost to your team, I think. There's also one player that we haven't mentioned who it's gone under the radar a little bit, is us bringing in Majcic. Obviously from EuroLeague, two-time MVP, two-time Finals MVP, two-time champion, one-time league MVP. It's always interesting when you bring these guys in, obviously from the EuroLeague. You don't know how their game's going to transition. But looking at his credentials, he could seriously end up being our backup point guard. And I think he's someone to watch for on your waiver wire. If he comes in and his game translates, he could be a serious player. Because I've watched some of his highlights and some of his games. He has no fear. He is just one of those guys. Oh, I love him.
Mate, those Euro blokes
I'm really
don't
excited
do
to see how that goes.
Yeah, no, they have no fear, those Euro blokes at all. Talk about Euro blokes. Poku. We haven't mentioned him yet for a reason. We said we'd shave it to this one. Oh, the grimace on the man's face, ladies and gentlemen. Look, is it time we say thank you next to Poku?
If we had a decent 4 that was coming up through the ranks, I would say yes. But given that we've got someone like JRE, like in Jeremiah Robinson-Earl, I think there's still chance for him. It's kind of that same boat as Trey Mann. I think this is the year that you need to show something or you're gone. Yep. Because we've seen Poku actually has really good flashes. And I'm actually really excited, and I think every OKC fan is, that we have to at least see Chet and Poku out there at one time together. We have to see it. It's going to make the world complete, and it'll make my life complete to see it. Because I think both of them actually have really good blockability. They really do. They both work well off the weak side as well. So if those two together, I mean, hopefully, I don't think we'll be doing it against Jokic, because I think Jokic will eat both of them. But
snap
I
them,
definitely want to see it.
And then pick out his teeth with their bones at the end of it.
It won't be pretty, but I definitely think there's still a role on this team for him. But at the end of the day, OKC drafted him in a year where we didn't have great picks. We picked him up as a bit of a project player. If it doesn't work out, so be it. I think that's just one of those ones that we move on from.
Now, talking about guys we're moving on to someone who we absolutely want to watch this space for this year. When we're talking about fantasy, we're talking about Chet Holmgren. He has absolutely shown out in the preseason and in the summer league. And he went in was it the 3rd round in a mock draft we did the other day? Because this is what I want to look at. Victor Wembanyama is going off the board in a lot of mock drafts early on in the 2nd round. So the second that he goes, everyone's like, oh, who else is the rookie? Who else is the rookie? Chet Holmgren was the potential first pick in the 2020 draft. He was taken 2nd. So a lot of the talk around the time was, where does Chet go? Ultimately, the Houston Rockets went for Jabari Smith Jr. Good choice for them. Great player. No disrespect there, like being bitten for number 1 or 2. But this is a guy, when you talk about number 1 picks, who could have basically been a number 1 pick. He's been on the shelf for a year after injury in that Pro-Am game in Portland last year with LeBron, where they had that little collision and has gone down. Broke a lot of hearts in OKC. It's just such a innocuous play that he went down. But this guy is a legitimate floor spacer. His 2-point percentage, and look at this, Trent. He has a field goal percentage of 607. His 2-point percentage from anywhere around the rim was 737. His 3-point percentage was 390. So that gives you that field goal percentage. This is a guy who just gets buckets and volume around the place. And mate, you're watching where he goes in your drafts, aren't you?
See, I'm actually going to be the kind of Debbie Downer on this one. I would not be reaching for Chet. From what I've seen, I think he's going to take a while to transition. Like, I've seen a lot of play from him where he tries in summer league and also the scrimmages, where he tries to take people off the dribble a little bit. Even when he gets to that mid-range, mid-post, he's still trying to back people up and then use his handles. I think he's still of that kind of opinion where he can use his handles. He's used to doing that against lesser opponents, and he turns the ball over. I think he's going to have a bit of a rough transition to begin with. So I'm a little bit lower on him in terms of fantasy value than most. Obviously, I think his blocks are going to be there. He's going to be huge with the blocks. I think the way he reads it defensively and reads the play is outstanding, and I think that's his biggest value to the team. But in terms of kind of where I think his numbers are going to be, especially that 3-point percentage, I see that being down around 32%. I don't see it being anywhere near that 39%. Field goal percentage around the ring should still be good because largely of someone like a Josh Giddey and a Shea drawing most of the attention in those pick and roll opportunities. So as I said, I would temper my expectations a little bit in terms of what he's going to deliver this season. But I would still probably be looking at him maybe 4th round, 5th round for me, not the 3rd round like in our mock.
Yeah, we're seeing him go off in some mocks and early chat about the 3rd or the 4th round for Chet. I actually have a comp. Mr. Stocky McStockerson, by the way, at college with 4.5 stocks has just put some barbecue sauce on that burger for me. I've got a Walker Kessler comp. Now, they're not the same guy by any way, shape, or form, but I actually think about it as Walker Kessler in my draft. If I'm looking for Chet, I'm looking at what his role is in OKC. But they just do their things differently. Like, no, what do you mean? Walker Kessler doesn't shoot threes, so he probably wants to, but he doesn't. Oh, but he's so long. He's strong and he's weak. No, it's the numbers. And if you look at Walker Kessler last year in his rookie season, he had a very high field goal percentage. So again, 700s for a field goal percentage for him is ridiculous because he obviously doesn't take a lot of threes or many threes, right? So that's up. So I see it as like, look, Chet's going to get you a high field goal percentage. Let's say 500s plus. That would be ideal at the end of the day.
Yeah. I think that's where he'll be.
Yep. Yeah. His 500s plus is great. Good. Solid. He eclipses all over Kessler's free throw percentage. So he wins that battle. He'll win the 3 points battle between them. He's going to get more points than 9.2 points. He's going to get about the same amount of rebounds in this team. I predict he's going to be able to pass out of that post a lot easier. I think he's got a much better flair as a playmaker. So he could get you 1.5 assists a game. He could probably get you half a steal, 0.4 steals a game, 0.6 steals a game. Very similar to Walker. 2.3 blocks could 100% be there for Chet. Now, Kessler finished the 22-23 season as the 67th ranked player overall. Best case scenario, Chet finishes around the same marker. So this is why you're not taking him pick 48 under, because he's going to return for you. If he does finish in that ballpark, that's 6th round value, 7th round value. Would you say that's probably fairer where he ends up at the end of the day? Or am I just, do I see the comparison too oddly?
I actually say, as you say, stripping away the actual player and just looking straight at the numbers, I think you're absolutely right. Field goal percentage might be a bit worse than Kessler's, but I think it's going to be because he's going to have a larger volume and he's also going to be shooting the jumper instead of just staying at the rim. His 3-pointers made per game, I think you'll see that be a bit average to start, but I think it'll ramp up as he gets more comfortable in an offense, understands when to pop, when not to, that sort of thing. So, definitely interested to see that. Rebounds, as you say, they'll be largely the same. And those blocks and steals, I think, will be largely the same. So I think you're actually pretty spot on with the numbers. And that's exactly why I said I would not be drafting in 3rd or 4th round. I don't think he's going to be that type of player. You can get better value there, and hopefully you can pick Chet up in maybe the 5th, 6th, 7th round where he should be. And anyone who wants to reach, good on them. That's good for you.
Yeah, good on him. 100%. So this is where you win a little bit by people jumping on guys. Like we always say, I should have taken that one. It's also the dude you shouldn't have taken that helps you win an NBA fantasy league. So all those times that you don't get a guy that you want and you can change your tact in a draft and take someone else, that's just good value at the end of the day. How did that get there? That's just me and Josh Giddey, Trent. I thought you might like to see that.
Jeez, was that at Doncaster? Was that at Doncaster?
No, that was down at Throwback Store in Sydney. Shout out to the guys down there in Darlinghurst. They get a whole bunch of the Boomers boys in when they're down here. I just thought, I should just show Trent. I like him too. He was a lovely guy, and the hair is real.
Oh, it is. I met him at Doncaster Shopping Centre as well. I got him to sign one of the basketballs behind me and a jersey up there as well. Awesome guy. And I asked him, I only had time to ask him one question, and my question to him was, what's Poku like as a bloke? And the answer was he's a good dude. His answer was he's a good dude, but he had that wry smile on his face like, yeah, this guy's weird. He's a weird cat.
Yeah, he is. This is our guy. So when we talked earlier about guys going either way this year, this is a tale of two giddies, ladies and gentlemen. In his rookie season, he was the 109th overall, according to hashtag basketball. Last year, he improved to the 84th. And you can see the improvement there highlighted in blue, how much Josh Giddey has already started to evolve. The one thing we want to see for him is a dependable floor spacer. So he's gone from 3.9 attempts a game as a floor spacer to 3.1 attempts. He actually is just sharing that a little bit. He did get this. Does he get the same amount of looks inside the arc? Well, he actually had in his last year 11.6 attempts a game. So we can see them being tempered, probably coming back a little bit or around the same with Chet on the team. We want to see him get to the cup and convert at the line. He doesn't take more than 2 free throws a game. And with his length, with his semi-athleticism, you could say, and just his shiftiness, this is a guy who could draw a lot more fouls if he could get that free throw percentage up. And he's already jumped it a little bit, up to 728 last year. Josh Giddey, this is interesting for me. Chet coming is going to help him. It could hinder a couple of things. His assists could be up again, rebounds down, free throw percentage up, field goal percentage. If you take it between the two, it's 450-ish. You know what I mean? What do you think? Where do we think Giddey's going to go at the end of the day? Because again, this is a guy that people reach for, and he's shown progress. But do you take Josh in the 7th round?
See, I'm high on Giddey. So high on Giddey, and I'm probably lower on Chet than most. So I think, as you say, I think his rebound numbers will probably stagnate. I'm tipping around the same mark, around that 7 to 8 mark, because I think the way you watch the way he goes for his rebounds, he is attacking the boards really hard. When I've watched Chet doesn't have that kind of really aggressive mentality towards rebounding at this point in his career yet. So I think this year at least, Giddey's going to keep those numbers. Assists, as I said before, I think he's going to boost those up to about 8 a game. But if you're trying to find a guard and you want scoring from your guard position, Giddey's not your man. I don't think, as you say, his attempts probably inside the arc in particular are going to drop because there's other people who need to eat. There's so many players and young, hungry players in OKC at the moment. Someone like a Jalen Williams, someone like a Chet, they're the ones who are going to have to get some of those shot attempts. So I wouldn't be picking him if you're after a scoring guard, but I do like the rest of his game, and I will probably be one of those suckers or geniuses who reaches for him.
Yeah, now look, we can see Josh Giddey. Look, he's gone. If you're in a 12-team league, at the end of the 6th round, you're getting the 82nd pick overall. And that's where he went off. So if you're getting him at the end of the 86th and he delivers around on mark, he's kind of one of those guys, assists are off the board in your fantasy draft by then. And if he's going to improve those to 8 a game, like you're not going to get 8 assists in the 6th round or 7th round very easily. Like you're not going to get those kind of numbers. If he can improve his steals, he dropped back just by 0.1 of a steal last year. If he can get 1.5 steals a game, if he becomes some little defensive menace and just gets in those lanes and gets a little bit nasty with it, that's where you can really see an improvement in Josh Giddey's game fantasy-wise this season. As a basketball player, he's got better, but for your fantasy game, he's about the same probably this year with some improved efficiency, hopefully, some improved free throw numbers. Look, I don't think the efficiency is going to improve. I think it's going to be 450s to 470s this year by the end of it. That being said, but if his free throws go up, his rebounds could drop because there's Poku in there. So not Poku, there's Chet in there to get some more of those boards. So there's a little bit less for him to be the team leader in rebounds. Assists go up, steals go up, but the turnovers are still going to be a thing for Josh.
Yeah, and I think that's just a byproduct of the fact that OKC want him to be a playmaker. They want him to try and find lanes where other people wouldn't find the lane. And I think you'll see a lot early on. I think there'll be quite a few turnovers of him trying to maybe force the issue into Chet on pick and rolls. But I think that'll even out through the year. And on that defensive stuff that you said you wanted to see his numbers get higher, I think the additions around him will actually mean that he ends up with more steals this year. Having someone like Cason Wallace coming around and flying around the court is going to pressure people into throwing passes they normally wouldn't. And one thing I have seen Josh do well is he does play the weak side lane well. So if you've got Cason putting pressure on the ball, they try to throw it over the top. I could see Giddey coming through for a few real open steals, fast break layup, and that'll really help his fantasy value, I think. So, yeah, watch that space.
That's a bit of an Australian boomer's speciality, isn't it?
Oh, they love it. They love playing that weak side lane.
Yeah, that's a big Aussie special right there. I've got a couple of predictions for you. You touched on this earlier. Play off, play in, or play it out this year. Which one?
Play-in. I'm going play-in. To be honest, though, I could definitely see a scenario where this team gets itself into the clear playoff spot. Especially with some of the West teams, there's a few question marks around some of those mid teams. So, yeah, I could definitely see us either being in the play-in or in the playoffs just straight out. So that's what I'm hoping for.
Now, last year you finished with points per game, 5th overall of 30 at 117. And your defense wasn't so bad. You finished top half of the league. Now, I said this, you're a top 15 defense last year. I see the verticality of Chet coming in to be a top 10, top 7. I've already spoken about that this year. With that in mind, you finished 10th last year in the Western Conference, 40 and 42 record. The expected win-loss, funnily enough, last year, the expected win-loss, even knowing Chet was down, was 44 and 38. Currently, the over-under is at 44 and a half games, paying $1.73 or under. So it's looking like, under is the one that's going to be taken. Over 44 and a half wins at $2.03. Do they eclipse their same? You're going over?
Yeah, we're going over. I think last year we kept on, I don't know if you followed along, but OKC had this running joke that we were just so scared of getting over 500. I don't see that happening this year. I see us getting over it. I don't see it being a hurdle anymore. I genuinely think we're going to end up around that kind of 46 to 48 win mark, I think.
This could be one of those ones you're watching you're watching like so nervously on a multi at the end of the year for them to hit that 45 wins in the last game of the season.
Yeah. It's going to be one of those ones. I think it's going to cut it fine. Like, I don't think we're going to blitz it and get into the 50s. And I don't think we're going to go into the 30s with our win-loss. I think the bookies have got us pretty spot on there. But I have some faith that we're going to eclipse it.
I see a path. I want good things for OKC. I see them playing, let's play some basketball and see how we go. And if they're shooting for a 8th, 9th finish, not just the play-in, and don't rest down the stretch, or they want to even just see if they can get cheeky with it and sneak into a 7th or an 8th. Sneaking into 7th would be great. I see them playing it out to that, but just where they finish overall, I don't know. I might take the under on that one. If they can even they finished 10th last year, if they can get to 42 or 43, or even to 44, I just don't know if I can give them that half a game. I'd love to see them at 44. I just don't know if I can get them at 45. So probably the under there for me at 44, because I want good things for them. Like, I want good things for you, Trent. Thank you so much for joining me for the podcast, brother.
All good. Go OKC.
Absolutely. And go and check out our wonderful sponsors, the Standard Squeeze, and use promo code, I'm wearing their hat right now, Insight15, and get 15% off all your swag there. They've got your 401 cups, you've got the merchandise, you've got your camper helpers issuing your standard drinks, and a whole lot more fun. We've got more pods coming your way. Check out each one of your teams. Cheers from myself, cheers from Trent, and cheers from the Inside Fantasy Sports team. Take care, all.